Hey folks, before we get started, I wanted to tell you about the Consumer VC Summit. The Consumer VC Summit is a 3-day virtual event that is focused on e-commerce, retail, and innovation. This is all happening February 23rd through 25th, 2021. Mark, Nathan, and I have really poured our souls into it. During the day is a mix of talks and panel discussions with some incredible founders and investors that focus on these sectors. In the evenings, we're going to be throwing networking events, and if you're a founder, you'll also have access to mentoring sessions, which means you'll meet 3 investors or industry professionals for feedback about your business. All of our talks and panels will also be available for replay with a ticket. Please check out summit.theconsumervc.com and enter ConsumerVC for a 20% discount. This is also located in the show notes. We look forward to seeing you there. Now on to the episode. Hello, and welcome to the Consumer VC. I'm your host, Mike Gelb, and on this show, we talk about the world of venture capital and consumer-facing startups. Over the holidays, we're going to be releasing highlights from past episodes from this year every morning of Hanukkah and each day during the 12 days of Christmas. I'm excited to share highlights from my conversation with George Milton, the co-founder and CEO of Yellowbird sauce, spicy condiments crafted to take you on a fiery, fresh food adventure. So, tell me a little bit about your story and how you started making hot sauce.
It's a long story. I'll tell you the short version. Me and my partner, Aaron, moved to Austin, Texas from Houston in 2012. We moved here as creatives. So I was working full time as a musician. So freelance, house band, studio stuff. And I had been doing that for about a decade, and she had come from the visual design world, and she was doing that at a corporate level. And she kind of moved to freelancing as well. So we moved to Austin, Texas with no jobs, got us a cheap house, and started kind of building our lives here, mostly based around creative work for her, design, and for me, music. We were at the time I guess I had just turned 30. So we were both coming out of our late 20s at that time, and we were getting into clean eating. And one of the things that, we both used to be, like, we were both student athletes and all this sort of stuff back when we were in school. We still, keep in shape and all of that sort of stuff. But we're getting to that point in our lives where it's like you start to realize that will only get you so far. So we were kind of trying to clean up our diets there in our late 20s. And one of the things that, like, the beginning of that was that we were reading ingredient lists a lot more. So this was 2011, 2012 that we were really getting into that. And just realizing, like, how much stuff that you don't think about is in your food that you get from the grocery store or restaurants or whatever. Preservatives, colors, flavorings, like additives that you don't really know what they are or how they affect you. And some of them are asinine, or some of them might actually be pretty bad for you. So we were really getting into ingredient reading. One of the things, we got a lot of stuff out of our regular diets that were, salad dressings and things that it's like, oh man, these have a lot of processed sugars in them. They've got a lot of hydrogenated oils. Like, it's a lot of the same ingredients that are in like cake icing and stuff that you're putting on a salad, or, like a lot of breads that you can get at the store have a lot of sugar in them, a lot of preservatives, things like that. So we had fairly well cleaned up our diets as far as what we were buying at the store. The one thing that I could not find a replacement for was we were using a lot of the Huifeng sriracha, and I try not to throw them under the bus, but there is a lot of sugar in that product. And there are a handful of preservatives that potassium sorbate, sodium bisulfite, stuff that is, not good for you. The only purpose of that stuff being there is to make the color look a little better, or to make the product last 5 years. It's like, it doesn't need to last 5 years. People eat that stuff so fast. There's no reason for it to last 5 years. So I just started making. I said, like, hey, for a while I was just looking for, like, because I was going through, a bottle of that sriracha like in 2 days or less. Like, I would just, I'd do beans and rice or chicken and vegetables or something, and it would just, sriracha would just go all over it. I mean, like, the stuff that I liked about it was that it was like a really thick sauce. It actually had a decent amount of heat to it, and the garlic, the sweetness, the consistency, the squeeze bottle, all of the things. Like, I liked all of those things about it, and I was like, there's got to be a version out there that is that's not so bad for you. And I looked for a while and I couldn't really find anything. Like, I was hitting the specialty markets, the online, any of the specialty natural grocery stores. There just wasn't anything out there at that time. And so I was just like, okay, I started working in kitchens when I was 15 years old. So a long time ago. And my first job was a hot wing joint, like, in the kitchen. And so we'd just be like drinking hot sauce out of I love hot sauce, but so I was like, I can figure this out. I can figure out, I had a list of like attributes that I liked, and then a list of attributes that I didn't like. And so, like, I had, like, when we moved to Austin, I was already in like full on experimentation mode. So, like, our pantry here, it was this house that we moved to, so we still live here, but the pantry was like all hot sauce experiments with like tape and numbers on them. And I had a bunch of notebooks that just had, like, batch number 78, batch number 78B. And, I changed the garlic. I used, potatoes in this one to try and thicken it up. And here's the results. And here's what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. Like, it was insane. Like, I was just trying to make something for us at home. So I think that that's important to note, that I was not trying to start a business. I was just trying to solve this problem for Aaron and myself. And the winning batch actually ended up being that, like, we had some stuff. I had a recipe that I was kind of tweaking. It had bell peppers and manzano peppers, and I was using some limes and some different things that I was kind of like tweaking amounts with. And then I had some we were like going through some stuff in the fridge. You know how when you're like you go through the fridge and you're like, you have all this stuff you want to kind of like get rid of. Well, usually what I will do is I'll make like a stew out of it or something. And like, so I think I had some carrots left over and some tangerines, and I was like, I'm just going to throw them in this batch of sauce. And I had it aging in the pantry with a number on it. And I was just like, I wrote down, okay, I added some carrots and tangerines that were like throwaway. And then we kind of forgot about it. And then I went back and I was like, okay, batch, whatever, I want to try this one. And it was like so good. It was like, so we used like carrots and tangerines was kind of like, that was like this, that was kind of the secret sauce for us. Like, I mean, it's on the label, right? I'm not telling you anything that's, but that was, for me, it was a good combination of like the sweetness of both, and kind of the you get a lot of thickness from carrots. They've got some natural thickeners in them. So anyway, like, that was the recipe that we used. That was turned into our habanero sauce, and that's all we made for a couple of. So that's how I got into it. I was just really obsessed with making something that would kind of fit this bill for what we wanted just at the house.
But what was the moment that you realized that, hey, maybe this could actually be a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's kind of, I mean, the moment, I don't know if there was like a single aha moment. It was something that kind of developed over time. But I was playing a lot around Austin at work, as a musician. I had a regular bar, a piano bar that I play at downtown. And there was, so I would like bring it in as I was kind of like mixing up these recipes. I would just bring it in and have people try it, like friends and family, etc. Like kind of if you're starting a business, the feedback group that is like, you kind of have to rule out, like if you're getting feedback from your mom that this is a good product, it doesn't really mean that it's a good business idea. But like I was I would take in some stuff, and I would have like a couple of jars of like, hey, I was, everybody kind of knew that I was making hot sauce, and because I wouldn't shut up about it, and I would be like, hey, this is this is batch number, this is batch number 15 of this recipe. Like, what do you think? I kind of think it's got too much salt, but let me know what you think. I'm sensitive, I'm real sensitive to salt or whatever. So let me get your take on it. And we finally kind of like hit on that, the amazing recipe that ended up being our first recipe. I was like taking it around to people that I knew and like, give it a try. And I was just putting it in those, those squeeze bottles, the like condiment, the plain, like kind of translucent condiment bottles you can just like get at the store and fill with whatever, like fill with oil or fill with a sauce or whatever. I was just getting those at like Restaurant Depot, and I was just so that's why I put the sauce in. I put in those condiment squeeze bottles, and I would just make a couple extra bottles and hand it out to people and just be like, hey, what do you think? Like, just, you can have this, give me your feedback. And the kind of like first recipe that was really good, like people just were like going ape shit about it, like, oh my God, this is so good. And I was like, okay, that's, cool. I think it's good too. And this is the recipe. So, and I would still, and then I had that group of people kind of like, well, hey man, let me get another bottle of that. And so it kind of turned into a, like, I'd show up at the bar, and I'd have to bring a backpack full of hot sauce, because I had 12 different people I had to like hand out hot sauce to, and it was just something that I was doing. It was something I was doing for fun, and then it kind of like I had also made a couple of albums, as a musician. Like I'd written and produced some albums, and I'd be trying to sell those, like, hey man, this was when people still had, I guess, physical albums, right at the end of that time when people could still sell a physical album and not just, hey man, look me up on Spotify or whatever. But I was like, I had these albums I was trying to sell, and it kind of got to the point where there were customers and people like from the bar, or like people in the surrounding area who kind of like knew that I was making this hot sauce. And I'd be like, hey, I got these albums, or, take an album for $5, or hell, just take one for free. I don't care. And people would be like, no, man, no, that's cool. I don't want an album, but like, you're the hot sauce guy, right? Like you got like, if there's any way that I could get a bottle of that hot sauce next time you play, like, let me know next time you're gonna be down here, and I'll come down, and, what does it cost? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it costs. Right. Like I was doing it for myself. I hadn't costed it out. And so that was a thing. I think I was probably selling it for, I think I was just selling it for the cost of the bottle. So I was like, I don't know, $2.50 or whatever, it cost for me to like get that physical squeeze bottle. And so that was kind of how it turned into a business, was just like me selling it out of my backpack at a bar where I was playing music and trying to sell albums.
That's amazing. Just people coming up to you and saying you're the hot sauce guy and just wanting your hot sauce. How did you approach distribution? Like, did you go from, I know that you started out in farmers markets. Was it first initially the farmers markets, and then was it direct to consumer channel, or just how did you think about distribution in the early days as well?
I didn't really think about distribution very much at the very beginning. When we were doing farmers markets, it was like here in town, or like we'd go not far. And then, like our early distribution was just like, we had a handful of, I had maybe 20 accounts in Austin for a little while, and I kind of thought that would be the thing, right? Like I had a handful of local restaurants and some like local grocery stores, which we have a lot of, we got a lot of like local markets, or, vegan markets, specialty markets. And so like I had signed on maybe 20 local places, and I would just like, once a week, I would just spend a day and I would drive around and say hey to everybody and give some high fives. These were back in the days when you could give high fives. And then I would just, I would drop off sauce, and, they would pay me for it. And that was kind of distribution. that was kind of the first version of distribution, like distribution V1. The first like chain that we got in that was outside of Austin was Whole Foods. And Whole Foods has been a really big part of building our brand. But it was when it was just me driving around to these handful of restaurants and stuff in Austin, and then we actually got a call from Whole Foods because they had apparently been eating lunch at a couple of the places that I was delivering to, and so they would swap between these two places for lunch. And it was like, I'm only delivering to like a handful of places in Austin. Out of all the places you can eat in Austin, I just happen to be delivering to both of the places that the Whole Foods team was like going to every day for lunch. And so they called us because I initially had my cell phone number was just like on the bottle, and so they like called, and it was like, hey, this is Linda from Whole Foods. And I was like, okay, sure it is. But she was like, yeah, we'd like to put you in some Whole Foods stores. And once I believed it was actually Whole Foods and all of this stuff, that like they ended up putting us in, I think like 36 stores like across Texas. And that was the point at which I needed help with the distribution. So we used a small distributor for a little while that was like, it was literally like 5 guys and a couple of like unmarked white vans. And they're not in business anymore. I would give them a shout out, but they don't exist anymore. But those were like, I mean, those guys were like distribution cowboys. It would be like, they would pick it up at like 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And then like at 9:30, they'd be like distributing it to stores in Dallas. And I'm like, how'd you even get there? And, in 3.5 hours. But so that was kind of the first version. And then we really had to kind of like lobby for years to start getting in with some of the bigger distributors. Cause that was kind of like, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like if you go to a retailer and say like, hey, I want to be, even if they really like the product, most places don't want to be the first person to get in distribution. Like most places don't want to be your anchor account. Luckily, like Whole Foods believes in our brand and was happy to be our anchor account, with our first big distributor. And then from there we could kind of go talk to other stores that they distributed to. So that's kind of how we thought about it. In the early days, it was really a lot of like, the guys we were using in the vans, like there would be times when it was like, cause they had such a small team, like they would call me up and be like, hey, Anthony has the flu. Like, can you make these deliveries to Houston? And I'm like, shit, I gotta leave now. But yeah, okay. So like that sort of stuff happened on a regular basis. It's not, you can't scale a company that way. It's not sustainable. And it's kind of like, yeah, but that was early distribution for us. And I fought hard for a bunch of years to get kind of like more ubiquitous in distribution. Cause we don't, the same way that we don't really have the capacity or bandwidth to be farmers, we also don't have the capacity to be distributors. So like there's like a couple of things that we do really well, and it's not, self-distributing, and it's not, farming our own produce. I wish we were farmers. I would love to just be outside that much. But
thanks for kind of taking us through like those early distribution days. And there you have it. If you enjoyed this, I highly recommend checking out George's full episode. Thanks again for listening, and happy holidays, everyone.